Hi, my name is Diane Scott, and welcome to the Best Boss podcast, where we're researching, rethinking, and redefining your leadership. Trust. Few things are as important to the success of your leadership than trust, whether it be establishing it, increasing it, or maintaining it. Trust is paramount to the success of your outcomes. Trust between the people that you lead, your peers, or your organization, it all matters. But what do you do if you had inherited a leadership that wasn't trusted in the past? How do you establish your leadership as the one to trust and help change the mindset of the people that you lead? Today's podcast is going to be spent on the subject of trust. And we're going to include a segment called, Okay, I Get It. Now what do I do? With some pragmatic approaches in order for you to increase the trust in the people that you lead, all in an effort to become the best bosses. So the title of the podcast is Trust, Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney. Now, what do they have to do with the subject of trust? Actually, it's quite a bit. Last month, I was in Wrexham, Wales. Wrexham currently is known for its football or soccer team. And the owners of the team are Ryan Reynolds, the movie star from Deadpool fame, and Rob McElhenney, the television star from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Now, I had the opportunity to actually meet Rob McElhenney in Wrexham, as well as many of the community leaders, some informal and some informal, last month. And it massively demonstrated to me the importance of trust and how to get it, earn it, keep it, and maintain it. So a little bit of history about Wrexham. In 2020, there was a lot of rumors that Rob and Ryan wanted to buy the team. The team was owned at that time by the citizens of Wrexham, and with a large amount of volunteers that ran the board. And I had an opportunity to meet somebody by the name of Brian Still. He was a citizen of Wrexham, but also on the board of the Wrexham Supporters Trust, which ran the volunteer organization, which ran the football team. He talked quite a bit about trust. He talked about how the community was not really inclined to trust two Hollywood actors with their beloved football team. You see, Wrexham had a long history of not trusting the football team owners. Added to that, they also had a very long history of the town. The town was a former coal mining town, and the coal mining has really long since been shut down, and people watched as the owners of the coal mines shut the team down, or shut the coal mines down, and their parents and their grandparents losing jobs. It's really hard when you're in that environment to feel that any owners of anything are going to trust. And what's interesting, at the same time that the coal mines were going downhill, the football team was also going downhill in tandem. So Ryan and Rob had a big hill to climb with a town that wasn't used to trusting. And so Brian still talked to me about how he was won over by these two Hollywood actors. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about that in a second. But in the short end of the stick is they ended up acquiring the team in 2021. And their arrival brought fame and fortune actually to Wrexham. And it was a struggling team, and they're doing very successful now. It's outlined their story in a documentary on Hulu called Welcome to Wrexham. And I highly recommend watching it. Now, how Ryan and Rob gain trust is extremely exemplary of how leaders can instill trust in their teams as well. It actually can serve as a great roadmap. But why does trust even matter to best bosses? Trust is crucial. It's the glue that hires processes, quality, safety, mandates, success, financial success. It's the glue that holds it together, because best bosses know that open communication, psychological safety, any place where there is trust, you're more inclined to want to be more engaged, to do better, and it really actually reduces stress as well. Think about a time where you were in an organization where the boss really trusted you. He wanted to do better. You wanted to see what you could do with it. You had a really good time with your colleagues. You enjoyed coming to work. Conflict, although they may arise, was handled differently. You were able to talk it out because you trusted people. You could take the risk, not being afraid to fail, not being afraid to be yelled at. Trust is elusive sometimes for some people and some leaders, but without it, the success that you get is really going to be an uphill battle. We get it. I don't want to oversimplify it. But trust is really not just a nice to have. It's a foundational element. Okay, so here comes the part. I get it. Now, what do I do? How do I get trust? How do I increase it? How do I maintain it? What do I do? So let's talk about the best bosses and the comparisons to what Rob and Ryan did as the really 4 key elements that I think are pretty good action items in order to get this trust. Element number 1, the fundamental understanding that trust is actually an individual game. Best bosses really know that trust, yes, it can be in a team, or you can do it in team meetings or town halls. And those are all very nice, but it's actually built one on one on one. It's an individual basis on one conversation at a time. And interactions one on one on one allow you to delve into those subtle nuances of what you're trying to accomplish. It also helps you explain some things that may not be easily apparent. It's built so incrementally, one person at a time. And what you need to do is you need to identify your key stakeholders. They may work for you and you call themselves boss. They may be key stakeholders. They might be peers. They may be on other teams. But once you identify them, really learn what matters to them. Show them how your values align, or in some cases don't align. If you talk about not aligning values, they're going to believe you when you talk about where you converge and where you diverge. That's a huge way of building trust between 2 people, even if you don't agree. One-on-one, look to elevate your leadership. Remember, building trust is an individual endeavor. It's done through real, genuine, thoughtful, and intentional conversations in those relationships. Still do your town halls, still do your meetings. Know that where trust is made, it's those one-on-one conversations. Point number 2. Listening is actually the secret sauce of trust building. Sounds counterintuitive, but best bosses talk less and they listen more. The documentary shows this actually beautifully because Ryan and Rob went to the community. Even in the documentary, they just show people talking. They don't see it in interview style. They let them tell their stories. They came from a variety of different places. They did an entire listening tour of that town. One of the people that they spoke of was a woman who had lost family members in the mine disaster years earlier. I actually did a tour of the museum dedicated to that mine disaster. Their stories really highlight the impact of these local decisions of the town, including the mine being shut down, and that the community's longing for the success of their football team to give them something to hold on to. And Rob and Ryan really exemplify this approach, and so many informal community leaders. They prioritize listening before they prioritize, here's the outline of what we're going to do. They had broad brushstrokes, but they couldn't show it. They couldn't talk about it until they knew what they were dealing with. For instance, there's a man named Wayne Jones. He's the owner of the popular pub called The Turf. And throughout the documentary, you see how his initial misgivings slowly increased or decreased over time as he trusted and had more conversations with Rob and Ryan. And you could actually see it as it threads throughout the season, how he started to believe that these people really had the club and the community's team in a high regard, and they knew and respected what exactly this team meant to them. I actually had the thrill when Wayne Jones in his pub giving me a Wrexham lager made me a pretty darn good hamburger. So, it's really funny, but his perspectives really underscored that importance of trust and building it. The other thing is, when I think about trust and I think about best bosses, it's kind of tied a lot to empathy. But watch how you show this listening. Like when somebody tells you a story or tells you what they're thinking, don't jump in right away. Sit on your ability to answer, politician your way through it, talk about how things are better. Just wait a minute. Just listen. It can make a significant difference. You want to decrease their skepticism if you have an answer so quickly before you actually take the time to listen to them. Again, genuine listening is great. Point number 3, words and actions matter. When engaging with communities or groups of people, mistrust is built by empty words not followed by actions. People aren't looking for promises. They're not looking for speeches. Those promises need to turn into visible action. Maya Angelou once stated that when somebody shows you who they are, believe them the first time. She really emphasized the fact that actions are what the measure of a leader is, much more than just words. Rob and Ryan continuously demonstrate this because they were talking about their commitment to the community, but very quickly they took those volunteers of the trust and turned them into employees, paid employees. They also went out into the community and really helped the community revitalize. They also hired quite a few people with disabilities that were firm supporters of the team for years. They wanted to show that they believed in the community, and they made very visible, demonstrable actions that they were going to do it. There's one more piece about what happens if you promise something and then it doesn't materialize, or something happens and the action doesn't happen. And there's something called transparency. It's a word that I feel may be a bit overused. Everybody says they want to be transparent, but let's face it, you can't always be transparent. For example, human resource issues. You can't be transparent with every one of those. But if you tell people, you know what, I can't tell you what's going on, but I also want to tell you that I'm not happy about it, and I can't reveal all the details, and you understand that. Be transparent about the ability that you can't be transparent. Be transparent about the ability that you didn't succeed in what you have promised. Tell people, they'll believe you. Tell them why you didn't do it, what you said that you would do, and promise about it. Now, here's the other flip side. Many leaders I see make this mistake. They promise something, they deliver, but nobody knows they deliver. So they promised that they would look at certain working conditions. They did look at the working conditions. They filled out a bunch of slips saying what they were going to do to improve it, but nobody kind of knew that they were doing it. Trust can't be built in covert actions under the radar. Let's hope somebody notices. You actually have to go back and fill people in and say, you know what? I listened, I did, and this is what happened. You actually have to follow it up with a follow-up to the actions. Don't hope that they just notice like in a miracle. Covert leadership, it doesn't work. If you do something, if you kept the promises, tell somebody. Tell the people that really want to hear about it. Perhaps number 4 is, I actually think from my research that's ongoing, I actually think it's the most important. Trust is a two-way street. You want people to trust you. I get it. But you have to show them that you trust them. The antithesis of trust in the workplace is micromanagement. Being overly involved with your employees' work can really send a signal of a lack of trust. In their weeds, checking in on them, keep asking questions. You got this? Do you got this? hovering. If you have a boss that states, I trust you, go ahead. I also trust that you're going to come to me if there's an issue. I don't think it's necessary to say to people, and I'm here if you need anything. It's a very helpful thing that a lot of leaders do. That goes without saying. Tell them that you trust them, and actionable, show them that you trust them. Stay out of their daily work. Show out of the progress. Yes, schedule an update for a week or so, but until then, let them alone. One of the interesting things about my research is that people are talking to me about a characteristic of best bosses, and I hear there's a lot in my tech sector, is that best bosses leave them alone. They let them do what they need to do. And actually, when I really started to think about trust, best bosses don't just leave people alone. Best bosses demonstrate trust by leaving people alone. It's a trust factor more than it is I'm just leaving them alone factor. So make it clear to people that you trust them. Tell them that you trust them. Tell them that you're leaving them alone, and do the checkpoints as scheduled, then stay out of it. Think about how you feel when somebody actually believes in you, maybe even more than you believe in you. You're going to work darn hard to make sure that you come up with it. So there's 4 major points. Trust is an individual game. Listen more, talk less. Align words and actions. And reciprocate the trust. Ryan and Rob had to work really intentionally in order to get the trust of the community, in order to get them to vote for them to have this. But they actually continuously demonstrate and show effort. The team is winning better than it's won in modern history. And I'm quite honored that many of the members of the community opened up their businesses, fed me, and talked with me about their stories. There's a chant in football during the game, and they say, less than a mile from the center of town, there's a crumbling old stadium that's falling down. No one invested as much as a penny. Bring on the Deadpool and Rob McElhenney. Honor to have talked with them, honor to have had you on this podcast, and I thank you. This is Diane Scott, the Best Boss Podcast.